Hello, everybody. This is Gary. Today is August 15th, 2022. It's Monday. It's 1:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States in Rochester, New York. And this is my Coping with Schizophrenia blog entry for today. Today I'm doing a lot better than I was over the past few days or last week. Last week I went to the psychiatric emergency room. I was also having vomiting and diarrhea. So I figured I needed to get both the psychiatric symptoms and my physical symptoms evaluated at the emergency room. So when I call the ambulance, they always send the police for a mental health call because it was both a mental health call and a physical problem as well. I went to the emergency room, and the emergency room for medical stuff is obviously not the same place as the psychiatric emergency room. The medical emergency room is downstairs on the first floor, and the psychiatric psychiatric emergency room is on the second floor. They evaluated me physically first, obviously to make sure that I was medically stable. They gave me fluids because they were afraid I might become dehydrated. They gave me medications for the vomiting. Didn't really give me anything for the diarrhea, but that passed in a couple of days anyways. And once I was declared medically stable, what they do is they take you up in an elevator that is locked. Once you're up there, you can't just get on the elevator and leave. The elevator is a elevator controlled by an electronic key that only the nurses and the doctors have. And once you're in the psychiatric unit, you can't leave until you talk to a psychiatrist. And so I was there all night, and then I talked to a psychiatrist around 10 a.m., and they let me go. I was hallucinating really bad with auditory hallucinations. My paranoia was pretty bad, and it just seemed to go around in circles. The more physically sick I became, the more intense my auditory hallucinations became, and more intense my paranoia became. But I calmed down. They gave me my regular medications. They didn't really change anything at that time. They gave me some Klonopin to calm down, even though I have Klonopin at home. They gave me my other medications as well, or at least most of them. And then they discharged me to go home because I wasn't suicidal or violent, and I felt a lot more calmer. It was rough for a few days even after I got out of the hospital. I had a pretty intense weekend this past weekend. It was a lot of anxiety, a lot of agitation, a lot of frustration. I wasn't physically sick over the weekend, but I was still pretty agitated with anxiety and paranoia, sort of intense hallucinations. Going to the emergency room is obviously something I don't like doing. I was actually doing pretty well up until last week. I hadn't been to the psychiatric emergency room since October 30th of last year. So I almost made it to a year, but not quite. Hopefully I won't have to go back to the psychiatric emergency room anytime soon. I went voluntarily. I'm the one who called the ambulance, and the police showed up because I mentioned to the 911 operator that it was both a psychiatric as well as a physical set of problems. And if you mention mental health stuff, they always send the police first to make sure that you're not armed or have anything dangerous, or just on the possibility that a person's on drugs and maybe not thinking clearly, or even if they're not on drugs and their mental health problems make them potentially suicidal or violent towards others. They always send the police first. The ambulance usually would refuse to approach a psychiatric patient until the police checked them out first, checked them for weapons, checked them for drugs, checked them for needles, that kind of thing. Anything sharp, anything that could be used as a weapon, or even if the person's just violent in general or suicidal in general. So they always send the police. And once the police get there, you're pretty much going to the emergency room, even if you change your mind. So I don't recall ever going to the psychiatric emergency room against my will. Every time I've called emergency services in my entire life, and I'm 56, I was always the one that initiated the emergency 911 call, and I always went voluntarily. I never had somebody else call the police on me and have them drag me to the hospital. That's never happened that I can remember. But I'm doing better today. The auditory hallucinations are not that intense. Depression's not that bad. Anxiety's not that bad. Paranoia and delusions are not that bad today. Just trying to stick to my daily schedule. I went out for a walk and did some physical therapy exercises. Did some work on my computer, making this video. I have to do my laundry later. And generally I'm doing a lot better than I was over the weekend or the week before that. So not much else to report. Like, share, comment, subscribe.